is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 698. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how are things?
Oh, they're good. I had a question. You know how they have these serialized magic cards, like you have the Ragavan number, 69 out of 500. So this is episode 699 out of 700. Is that
698?
Right?
698. Yeah.
698 out of 700 total. Is that the?
I guess we'll find out in a couple episodes.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's more up to you than anybody, I guess. We've got some mom talk here. We're going to be talking about March of the Machine. We've had our hands on the format for quite a while now, but both Luis and I have been jamming quite a bit. And so we're going to do a combination of our thoughts on the format, cards, a few archetypes, kind of dig deep on what's going on in the set to help you get your footing in it if you're just diving in now or if you're having a hard time getting that. But we're also going to combine it with some of the 17 lands data. It's definitely not correct to just look at that data and assume that there's no context. Whenever we have Sirkovitz on the show, he always makes sure to remind us of that data is useful up to a point, but context matters a lot. And so we're going to kind of compare what we've been thinking versus what the numbers say. And we're going to go over some of the battles, and we're going to rank the battles and do some fun stuff like that. So that's what we've got on the show this week. Before we get started on that, we want to say thank you to everybody on Patreon. That's our support for this show. And we really appreciate it. Everybody who's over there, thank you very much for helping us support the show and keep it going. It's patreon.com/limited resources. Before we jump into what will be 2 Crack-A-Packs, because we just like to do a couple on the early shows just to get a lot of talking points out of it and that kind of thing. We did have a showdown last night, Luis. We faced off against the Lords of Limited in March of the Machine, and it did not go well.
No, they rinsed us. In fact, BK was our only match win. Mm-hmm. He went 1-1.
Yep.
You went 0-2, and I,
Swiftly,
of course,
too.
went 0-2 as well. Yeah, it wasn't honestly that close. I was up a game against Alex. I was feeling okay about my blue-black kind of mid-range-ish deck with some Convoke stuff. And then he just wiped the floor with me with Phyrexian Censor, which I still maintain is the worst card in the set in terms of design and inclusion.
I explained that card to my friend Drew, who's a kind of on and off Magic player, but he's done game design and stuff. And he was like, really? Because he heard that, he understands that battles are a big splashy premiering of a new card type in this set, and to just sort of turn them off in many ways isn't great.
Right. And then just got demolished by Lord Tupperware as well. And yep. So that brings it to 8-6 in our favor. Mm-hmm. So we're only up by 2 at this point. Though I guess we won the last one. They won the one before that, and then they won last night. So they're on 2 out of the last 3 have gone the Lord's way. The showdowns are awesome. I'm always a fan, and this was maybe not the closest one, but you know what? That does happen sometimes.
Oh, I hate them. I mean, talk to me next time after we win it. I'll tell you it's the best. The best day of the cycle, but man, getting smoked like that sucks.
Oh, it totally does. It's just we're going to have the Marshall Don't Draft Teamer 2023 challenge.
Yeah, I opened that stupid Mythic or whatever. The
Borborygmus and
Fibblethip. And I'm like, all right, fine. And then I actually tried to lean into 5-color. But the interesting part about drafting with only 6 players is the wheel comes around so much faster. And you have a higher chance to get those cards because there's just fewer cards taken. And none of my stuff came back out of pack 1. I thought, okay, well, somebody else is dipping into some of this fixing and stuff. So I ended up playing just Teamer. It was tough, though. I do feel draft has a very random element to it in the way that the archetypes play out as well. For example, I played against Mr. Metronome, who had kind of a green-black base deck with a whole bunch of ground creep, just a bunch of 1/1s. He had tons of the Thallid Maker guy and all that, right? Just gums up the ground and really gets you. And that was actually pretty good against me because ultimately I didn't have a lot of ways to push through, and he had a better end game. But then I played against Corticals, who was blue-white, which was the place to be in this draft just by chance. We just happened to open up a bunch of Marshals of Zalfir and Rafts and stuff like that. And so he, had probably the strongest deck out of the field, I guess. And he completely smoked me by flying over, all of my stuff. And I thought to myself, this is actually tough matchup for the first one. matchup wise. The tough matchup in the second match for me was just because his deck was way better. But it did make me think, well, what if they played each other? Like Cord would absolutely smoke, Metronome's deck because he's just flying over all these 1/1s and doing all these tempo plays on him and stuff like that. But instead, I faced both and lost, and you faced one of them and lost. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. Congratulations to the Lords for a convincing victory in that one. We'll get them next time, though. Let's do a couple of Crack-A-Packs here, Luis. Again, we love to use Crack-A-Packs, especially early in the format, because it gives us a lot of talking points and lets us kind of talk about what we've been seeing and what we haven't. So our first card out is Bonded Herd Beast. Boy, this one's been a flop. That's the 4 and a green 4/5, and you can pay 4 and a Phyrexian red to transform it into a 7/5 Menace.
Menace, yeah, it's just there's enough stuff to do with your mana, as there always is, that I think one of the lessons we can take from modern set design is cheap cards continue to overperform, expensive cards continue to underperform, and that I think is basically just true across the board.
I think so too, and that quip you said right at the beginning there is also true, which is that it's not common in normal sets now to find yourself without places to put your mana. They've really got mana sinks and lands that turn themselves into scryers or card draw or something really down pretty well now, and it still happens, of course, but it is much less common. And I mean, Bonded Herd Beast isn't a card I even look at. Like, it's just not even on my radar. Next is Ichor Drinker. And to prove your point, Luis, this one is very much on my radar. This is a black 1/1 lifelink. And you can pay a black and exile it from your graveyard to incubate 2. We talked about this one last week, and you were saying you were playing it all the time. And I thought, well, okay, I trust Luis, and I've been playing it too. And yeah, it's been solid.
It's just a good, cheap, effective play. It clowns any X1s. Like they play like a wary thespian or something, and you're just like, all right, well, this huge advantage for me.
Yep.
And it works really nicely with Convoke. You can sacrifice it to various things. It just continues to overperform. It's a 1-mana spell, and sometimes it taps for mana with Convoke. Like that, you really don't need much once you're in that spot.
No, and it is one of those, we call them pivot cards that can go slot itself into multiple archetypes in a reasonable way. Next up is Tidal Terror. This is the 4 blue 5/6 island cycler that when you attack with it, you can tap 2 other creatures and becomes unblockable. Kind of interesting. I mean, the land cyclers have been a big part of my journey so far in March of the Machine. But I will say Tidal Terror, sometimes, right? Like I play it. It's okay. But it is a little... I don't know. I don't prioritize it quite as much as like the black one or something like that.
Yeah, I just don't think the land cyclers are very good.
Whoa!
I think that they're
That's
just
a hot
not.
take.
I don't even know if I guess it might be a hot take overall. It hasn't seemed to me because when prepping for the PT and talking with my teammates, like none of us are that high on them. Mm-hmm. I just don't think you want to spend turn 2 or turn 3 land cycling them, and then casting them for 6 mana is just not quite enough. It's just Magic has moved on from this kind of thing. Like, okay, I think you should just put good cards in your deck instead.
All right.
Flexibility, I guess I've gone down a little on flexibility and up on power level, efficiency.
Raw power, making something happen now.
Yeah, and I think neither of those, it's not efficient on either end, which used to be fine because it was flexible. Early in the game, it was a land. Late in the game, it's a 6-drop, right? That is what you want. But I don't think that Magic really lends itself to that in the same way anymore.
Yeah, what I've kind of done is put more pressure on what I get when I cast it, right? So like this one's on the lower end, Tidal Terror, right. Like it's just okay. But like the white one's the best one, for immediate impact. And the black one too. Those two are like legit top end cards that like actually matter. They can swing a game for you. They change the board state significantly. So I've been a little more excited about those. But it is interesting because I still had those in my head as being quite strong. But I actually like with those two exceptions, I am finding myself following what you're saying. So maybe my algorithm has adjusted in my head too, where I'm just like, these are okay, but they're just not really priority. And by the way, I'm going to do a little exercise with you after we do the Crack-A-Packs, Luis, where I've actually gathered what I would consider to be above average cards from each color at common. And we're going to see how far the list goes and kind of how they match up with how you've been seeing the format. So we'll keep an eye out for the land cyclers in those lists as well. Next is Scroll Shift. That's the 2 and a white instant exile up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and you draw a card.
I've come down on this one a bit as well. I guess I didn't even start that high, but it just, yes, this can be good. You can flicker something with an ETB and you feel pretty good about that, right? You get some good value. But my experience with it is that you don't really have the time to kind of spend on that, and most of the time the card ends up on the wayside as a result.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of a card that you can imagine many scenarios where it would be good. It has a significant upside, and fitting it into your deck is very, very difficult. You have to cut something good for it, and that is usually incorrect. Next is Failed Conversion. This is 4 and a black for the aura that gives a creature -4/-4, and if that creature would happen to die, you get to Surveil 2, which
I wonder
usually
how.
happens. Yeah. This is absolute classic D-level removal for me. It's just the sorcery speed, doesn't kill everything, does offer you an upside. You can play one in your deck if you need to, and you just sort of hope not to.
Yeah, and I tend not to have that card in my deck.
Me too. Oculus Whelp is the 3 and a blue 3/2 flyer, and if you control a transformed permanent, it gets, when this thing dies, you draw a card. I haven't been playing too much of this guy either.
Not doing it for me either. I feel like it just is too vulnerable. You spend too much mana on it, and then you also don't get a card out of it most of the time.
Most of the time. The blue-green cares about transformed things was not a full effort, let's say, by the design team. It's not a fully supported archetype. There's just a couple of nods to it where you get a little bonus here and there. This is one of them. It doesn't really incentivize you to try to go into it. It makes sense, though, from a design perspective, because you're already incentivized to transform things, right? They don't make versions of cards that are worse on the transform side. So you already want to do it. So it didn't make a ton of sense, I don't think, for them to give you a whole bunch of benefits for doing so when you're already benefiting so much. Atrax's Fall. This is the 1 and a green sorcery. Destroy an artifact, battle, enchantment, or creature with flying. It does hit a lot of different permanents, and even in the best of 1 queues, I have been nabbed by it a few times. But for me, I have been reluctant to run it in the main.
Yeah, I think that when it works, you got an okay deal, okay to good deal. And when it doesn't work, it's a disaster, which that risk reward doesn't really line up for me.
No, me neither. And it lines up against what you said, where you want to be doing powerful, efficient things. Like this is way too swingy for that. Next common is Sunder the Gateway. This is 1 and a white for a sorcery. Choose 1, destroy target non-token artifact or enchantment opponent controls and incubate 2, or incubate 2, then transform and incubate token you control.
I think the card is fine to put in your deck, but I have, again, found it's just okay. It's not anything special.
Yeah. I mean, I want a little bit of a payoff, right? If I'm going to play a 2/2 for 2, which is what this is, as a token and a Phyrexian and blah, 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 just give me a little something. Just, it doesn't matter if I have the Pumps All Phyrexians thing or just something in there, but it does need to be just slightly better. Last common is Red Cap Heel Slasher. This is the 3 and a red 2/3 backup 1 with First Strike. I never run this card.
No, I don't think it's good enough.
I don't think so either. I think that backup 1 is a good mechanic and it's solid, but you can just do better, right? I mean, remember, we would say all these cards are totally fine in a vacuum. In fact, I think literally every one of these is totally fine. Maybe Atrax's Fall is a little situational, but every other one is like, yeah, what's wrong with that card? Well, what's wrong with it is that there's another 4-drop sitting next to it that's better and saying, I'm going to take that slot. Thank you very much.
As we go through this pack, remember how many cards we talk about this card's fine, not quite good enough. This is why I've come around and am very much in favor of companioning Yorion, by the way.
Because if you don't mind going down to a Red Cap Heel Slasher, a Scroll Shift in your deck, an Oculus Whelp, you can then get the companion bonus, and you're not giving up that much.
It's not like playing the failed conversion is a disaster.
No,
like,
not at all.
The card's obviously fine.
Yeah,
it's just when you only have to play like three or four of those, then it's not that bad. And I'll speak more about that when we get to the companion section of the show, which there will be.
As well. Yeah, and I think it is worth noting, right, that like this is where the rubber meets the road. Is okay. You like Scroll Shift. You think it's a good card. What are you cutting? Right?
Yeah.
Are you going to put your creature count one lower to get a Scroll Shift?
That's why you don't have to cut anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yorion gives you the green light. The uncommons. The first one is Fearless Scald. This is the 4 and a red 3/2 double striker with backup 1. I have been able to make this work once. Yeah, I had 2 of the sword, the Ramosian sword or whatever it's called. Great sword. Yeah. I had 2 of those and 2 of these guys, and turns out that combo works real nice together. Yeah,
I mean, there are things you can do that are powerful with this card very clearly. So yes. I would never say it's not a playable. It's certainly a playable card and can be a great curve topper. I just don't really prioritize 5-mana spells.
Yeah,
betterly, not ones that are unless they're like fantastic.
That's right. Next is Zalfirin Lancer. This is the 2 and a white 3/3. Human Knight. Whenever another knight ETBs under your control, this guy gets +1/+1 in vigilance until end of turn. It's just
this
fine,
is solid
right?
for the Knights deck. I mean, when I'm playing against the Knights deck and they play this on turn 3,
it's scary.
It does beat the crap out of you.
It does. And there's the 4-drop that makes 2 knights, and you're just like, oh, come on. Our last uncommon is Invasion of Belanon. This is the 2 and a white 5 defense invasion. And when it ETBs, you make a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. And it flips over into, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like an anthem.
Yeah, this battle in particular has underperformed, and like Companions, we're actually going to go through all the uncommon battles as well today. This is one that looked pretty good and ended up being pretty bad.
I find it okay. I mean, I like that it affects the board, and by the way, it's called Belanon War Anthem, so it's literally an anthem. You think it's bad, huh?
I just don't think it generally. It doesn't add enough when you play it as a 2/2. You wouldn't put 3-mana 2/2 in your deck,
right? And
just with 5 defense, the way this plays out, you can flip it, but it's gonna be like, at what cost?
Yeah,
and you're gonna end up in a spot where you flip it and you have 1 creature left, and it's just not that great.
That's true, and that is the biggest weakness of it, is that given the 5 defense, you do, there's times in this game, in games of March of the Machine, where you throw away a creature to get a battle flipped. You just do it, right? Because the crappy creature you lose is much worse than the really good creature you get off the battle. That's not the case here. If you lose creatures trying to flip Invasion of Belanon, you are making Invasion of Belanon worse. So I do definitely see your point there, and I'm not super high on the card, but I will say I have yet to cut it from a white deck. Like, I've just been playing it, so maybe I should revisit. I don't know. Is it a sideline card for you?
Yeah, it's not that I'm cutting it from my white decks. It's that I'm not drafting it.
You don't take it highly enough, and other people take it higher than you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the uncommons, but we do have actually 2 rares here. One of them that I've cast multiple times, and another one that I've cast multiple times. So the first one is our Multiverse Legends card. It's Niv Mizzet Reborn. That's right. That's the Wooburg Niv Mizzet 6/6 flyer for 1 of each mana color. And when it ETBs, you look at the top 10 cards of your library, and for each color pair, you can take a card that's exactly that color pair and put it into your hand. It's sweet. I put it on the battlefield. Yeah, it is a real thing. It's not completely optimized, right? But this is, 2-color format, so you do hit. The thing that I think is easy to forget is just how good a 6/6 flyer is. Yes, this isn't really 5 mana, but it actually isn't. Like, most of the time, the amount of mana sources I have on the battlefield when I cast Niv Mizzet is about 6. It might be 7. Sometimes it's 5. But, like, this is not a 10-drop. Like, you can get these down. The fixing's there. Like, and you just have this huge flyer. And if it even draws you 1 spell, you're already, like, in a pretty decent spot. And I had it draw me 3, on one, and it was my opponent just scooped. They're just like, okay, this is stupid, because they get to see what they are, and they're obviously great cards, right? They're all your gold cards. So yeah, I don't know. I actually like Niv Mizzet a lot, and I wouldn't be afraid to take it. I do like the Wooburg battle better, but I would take Niv Mizzet. I wouldn't be afraid to take Niv Mizzet at this point. I don't know if it would be my pick. I have to look. What am I taking it over right now?
Zhalfirin Lancer?
Yeah, I would take Niv Mizzet, actually.
Niv Mizzet over Zhalfirin Lancer.
Yeah.
I don't think at the Pro Tour I would Niv Mizzet over Zhalfirin Lancer. I think
you would take Lancer and just...
Blue-White's just one of the best decks, and Lancer's a good card for that deck.
Totally.
If I'm on Arena, yes, I'm taking Niv Mizzet.
Yeah.
If your goal is to win, if you're playing the Arena Open, which is this weekend, by the way.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it is. People were talking about it in my chat. If it's on, I'll play it. I'll just check just in case. But
I'm in.
April 29th. Yep, 2 days. So if it's in the Arena Open on day 2 and you're drafting, I think you should take the Zhalfirin Lancer. I think that is going to be the better pick for you. But Niv Mizzet certainly the more fun pick. And I don't think they're like miles apart. If Zhalfirin Lancer wasn't in the pack, we're now talking Niv Mizzet versus Ichor Drinker.
Yeah.
Or Fearless Scald. Yes, I would take the Niv Mizzet there.
Yeah, because now you're talking about the upside, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious, we talk about this a lot on the show, but the risk that you're taking is that there's a chance you're not in the 5-color archetype, and Niv Mizzet Reborn is complete, sideboard material outside of that deck. But bury the lead here a little bit, Luis. Our other rare is the best card in the set. It's Sunfall.
Has it taken the crown back from Elish Norn? Because I know Elish Norn and Sunfall were like kind of battling as to what would have the highest win rates.
Yeah, let me double check, because the last time I looked, though, it's
flipped a few times, I think, and both of them are at absolutely absurd win rates.
It is ahead. It's actually ahead by a lot now. It's ahead by 1.5%.
There you go.
I mean, 5 mana versus 7 mana is probably just the difference. I mean, Elish Norn is a better card, I think, but for the mana cost, you can't beat Sunfall. If you haven't played with or against yet, it's the 3 white sorcery that exiles all creatures, and then you incubate X, where X is that number of creatures. It's stupid. Like, it is legitimately amazing. The format is not fast enough to outrace Sunfall. We have had some where sweepers on 5 were kind of iffy. That's not the case here. You get a lot out of it. The only knock, right, is that if they are saving their incubator tokens, they could crack back on you pretty decently, but that never seems to actually happen. And I never seem to lose after I cast Sunfall, and I never beat it.
Yeah, I mean, the card's one of the best cards in the set for constructed.
Yeah, totally. So easy pick there at the end. And it actually ended up being a pretty interesting pack. Let's go to Kraken pack number 2. And we'll start off with Iridescent Blade Master. That's the 1 and a green 2/2 that you can pay 3 and a green to pump it by +2/+2.
Never play this card.
Never play it. Never ever.
I should preface the thing. I never play this card. I'm not saying you should never play this card.
No,
but I don't think it's a good card.
I never put it in my deck. I mean, if I did, it was because I was desperate for it too. Next is Ren's Resolve. Speaking of cards I prefer not to play but have 2 of last night. This is the 1 and a red sorcery, and you exile the top 2 cards of your library, and until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. It's not even a bad card. It just, especially in the deck. You just don't have room for this. No.
And part of the issue I have specifically with Ren's Resolve in this format is this format, I think, has a lot of cards that want to be played at a certain time, whether that's because you're setting up your Convoke card, it's a reactive card, it's a battle that you really want to land at the right time. Ren's Resolve is great, and we've seen this card Reckless Impulse, right, in previous formats. It's great if you have like a low curve deck that just has a bunch of creatures in it and you're just waiting to play them. It's not particularly good in a deck that specifically wants to play its cards on a certain turn and is not looking to just get, card quantity value.
No room. Consuming Etherborn, speaking of, this is the 3 and a black 2/2 with backup 1 and lifelink. I don't ever play this card either.
Nah. And this one even has the dream of like, get in for 5 points of lifelink the turn you play it. I just don't see that coming up.
I think it's also a result of the fact that the format didn't end up being particularly fast as far as damage races go. So this type of card would really shine, right? If you were getting beaten down,
right?
But you had a 2/2.
I can imagine that card in original Zendikar where you're like,
it could
landed on your 4 power 3 drop and you just win the game on the spot.
Right. And your opponent's like, oh man, they had it, that kind of thing. But here it's like, sure, gain whatever. Like, I don't care. I've got all this stuff to do. Arachnoid adaptation. This is the green instant target creature gets +2/+2 and gains reach until end of turn, and you untap it.
Nah.
It's a decent trick, but it's just not a format where combat tricks rule the day. Temporal Cleansing. Played a lot of this one. This is the 3 and a blue sorcery with Convoke. And you'll notice that Luis and I are both very high on Convoke. Really, really powerful mechanic, as it turns out. We knew that. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it into their library second from the top or on the bottom.
This is one of the multiple blue swords to plowshares in the set. As far as dispersal being the other one. And when you get to go like 1 drop, 2 drop, next turn 3, 2 drop plus temporal cleansing, like those games are hard for your opponent to come back from.
Yeah.
You just started out so strong there. And second from the top is critical too. It means like if this is a problematic card, it's a turn away. It's not being there. It's not getting there right away. And that is huge. Obviously they can put it on the bottom if they want to, but then you still just killed something. And because of Convoke, I think a good way to look at Convoke with this card is how good would this card be if it costs 2 mana? Well, you would never cut it from a deck.
Right.
Like for 2 mana. So I think with Convoke, you can look at there's no hard, fast rule, but I think the Convoke cards cost about half as much as they do is a good way to think about them.
On average, yeah.
And that's why Artistic Refusal has a really high win rate, the 6 mana counter draw 2, and then discard 1. Because how good would that card be at 3 mana? Well, it'd be busted. Well, that's kind of how it plays.
It does play like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah, Temporal Cleansing. Excellent. It also, in 2 of the 4 blue-based archetypes, the tempo effect really matters, like in blue-white and to a lesser extent blue-red. You can actually punish, you could bounce something and hit them for a lot of damage. Blue-green and blue-black less so, but you're still getting the removal spell aspect out of it. Next is Knight of the New Coalition. This is the 3 and a white 2/2 with Vigilance that also creates a 2/2 blue and white Vigilance token. Pretty decent card, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a card that I like in Blue-White Knights. I like in White-Black Sacrifice. It's great in your index. But for the most part, I don't think you have to take this card, with any sort of priority.
Yeah, works well with Convoke. Next is War Trained Slasher. This is the 3 and a red 4/3 menace, and whenever it attacks a battle, you double its power until end of turn.
Another card I just don't play very frequently.
I don't either. Doesn't make the cut. I tell you, the 4 mana spot is really tough. There's a lot of good battles at 4, and there's the transform creatures, like a couple of key ones transform at 4. Like, you really got to kind of pull your weight, and cards like War Trained Slasher just don't. Last comment is Drag Recycler. This is the 1 and a black 2/2. You can tap it, sacrifice an artifact or creature to drain your opponent for 1.
I like this card. This card has played out a lot stronger than it looked like it was going to.
Okay, what do you like it in? I mean, black-red is its obvious home, but...
Black-red or black-blue or black-white, just as a symptom of, like, the Convoke things and other, and, like, the Sacrifice theme, those 2 themes put together mean that I think you end up playing cards like this in most of the black pairs. I guess it's fine in black-green, too. Drag Recycler is just a fine card. It's a 2-mana 2/2, gets on the board, gives you a sack outlet. The drain kind of does add up and can actually, really impact your opponent's plays and life total. Look, I'm not saying I take this card super high. I don't. But, well, I guess I didn't the last time I drafted Lurrus. I third picked it. But but for the most part, I think that you can just put this in a deck with a lot of creatures and generally be happy with the outcome.
Our uncommons, Tandem Takedown. This is the 1 green instant. Up to 2 target creatures you control each get +1/+1 until end of turn. They each deal damage equal to their power to another target creature, planeswalker, or battle.
I would take Temporal Cleansing over this.
You take which one?
Temporal Cleansing. Yeah, like if you're heading the removal, I'd rather have the blue one because I also think blue is so much the best color that I'm not starting with a green card and I can start with a blue card, and the cards are comparable. Like I'm not going to say that one is even that much better than the other.
And tandem takedown's double green, like it's very committal.
And requires creatures. Like I would be willing to bet money that you specifically have drafted a bunch of 5-color green decks that don't want tandem takedown.
Definitely.
Like that maybe you would take it, but you wouldn't take it very highly. You would much rather have like almost anything else.
Yes, that's very true. This next card I've drafted a lot whenever I see it. It's Collective Nightmare, 2 and a black instant with Convoke, and target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. That's some business. Yeah,
I do like Collective Nightmare. This one I do like more than Temporal Cleansing. It's very similar, goes in a lot of the same kinds of decks, but 3 mana and instant speed and just kills anything is that's where I want to be.
Yeah, definitely. That would be my pick here. But we've got 2 more uncommons and once again 2 rares actually. So because we got a foil apparently. So our first of the last uncommons, I should say, is Invasion of Mercadia. That's the 1 in a red battle with 4 defense, and when it ETBs, you can discard a card, and if you do, draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
And then what does it become again?
It becomes the Kylum Spell Shaper or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the 3/3 goblin. You can pay 2 in a red and tap it and discard a card, make 2 1/1s, then give all your creatures +1/+0 in haste.
Yeah. And they stick around. Like, yeah. I think that there's we're used to those type of cards getting exiled on the end step, but they don't. That's a very strong card.
So I really like, and again, when we cover invasions, we'll talk more about this, but I do like the 2 mana battles rather that you'd kind of play anyway. Tormenting Voice was always like you're borderline playable, like you're not unhappy one way or the other. And then you end up getting a lot of extra value because you can attack and flip this pretty early.
It goes from card neutral to card advantage once you flip it, right?
Right. You're basically playing a card that improves the quality of your draws, right? You get to discard your worst card to draw 2 new cards. But the upside is sometimes you get a free 3/3 if the board is such that you have a flyer or an unchecked attack. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. How do you think it lines up against Collective Nightmare?
I would take Collective Nightmare still. Collective Nightmare is really good.
I think it's interesting because I think Invasion might be a better card, but like slightly, but I would take Nightmare as well. It's more flexible, better color.
Nightmare's always great.
Yes.
The Convoke instance in particular, which Temporal Cleansing is not, like something like Meeting of the Minds, Collective Nightmare, Artistic Refusal, they slot into your curve kind of wherever you want. So with Collective Nightmare, it's like 2-drop into 2-drop plus Collective Nightmare your creature, or the Dream, which is Collective Nightmare when I'm tapped out, when you played a combat trick, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And I've done that. I've had the creatures and they just can't play around it. Yargle is our legend. That's the 4 and a black 9/3. Not going to take that. Our rares. Our regular one is Rona, Herald of Invasion. This is the 1 and a blue 1/3. And whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap it. But that's really not the money. It's a looter. You can tap it to draw a card and discard a card, and you can pay 5 and a Phyrexian black to transform it, and it becomes a 5/5 trampler that whenever it gets dealt damage, they have to sack that many permanents. This card's
awesome. I mean, 2 mana 1/3 looter that at some point just becomes this like huge threat.
It really doesn't ask anything of you. This card's been awesome for me.
Yeah. Fantastic card.
So is it better than Collective Nightmare? It is, right?
I would say so by quite a bit. You would play this without the transformability. The transformability means there's no point in the game where this card's not good. Like a looter is good early and late, actually. But then at some point you're like, all right, I've improved my draw well enough. It's time to make this into a 5/5 obliterator that you can't realistically get into combat, or at least if it do, it kind of punishes you, you know?
Yeah. It's also a 2 mana blue creature, which is really great for all the Convoke stuff. It's also in the best color. So there's a lot there. But I might be able to convince you away from it, Luis.
Oh, yeah?
Our foil is Monastery Mentor, the 2 and a white 2/2 with prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you make a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess. Can I pry you away from Rona with one of your
Monastery
favorites?
Mentor is really good. If they don't kill Monastery Mentor, you do run away with the game. That is definitely true.
Especially since like battles trigger it, like a lot of the stuff that it's any non-creature spell. It's not just instants and sorceries. The card is completely stupid if you get to untap and start doing things. Would you take it over Rona is the question.
That's tough. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, it's really close.
My guess is Monastery Mentor has not even a guess. Monastery Mentor has a much higher high end. If you have this in the right deck, you end up white blue spells with like a Mentor or Wrath and like a bunch of spells, including Angelic Intervention and Bar's Dispersal and stuff. I think the Mentor is going to be absolutely better. I could see Rona being better. Like on the average Rona case is pretty good. Like this card's fantastic in any deck you put it in. Mm-hmm. And blue's a lot better than white. I think given all that, I would still probably take Monastery Mentor because especially when you first pick it. When you first pick it, just imagine a blue-white Convoke deck with Monastery Mentor.
Oh my god! Yeah, that's just ridiculous.
Doesn't that just do the whole thing?
It does all of the things. Yeah. Let's see what 17 Land says. Again, not that they're the arbiter of all things, but just as a litmus test. So Rona gets a 59.4%, which is actually a little lower than I would have expected. And Mentor is at 57.
Well, okay. But
I would still do Mentor, but
I think that also reflects to some degree that people open Mentor later in packs and don't have the optimal deck for it. Like, obviously, there's no way to separate this out really, but I wonder if a pick one, pack one Monastery Mentor might be better than a pick one, pack one Rona, even if Rona like pick three or pack three might be better and pack two might be better. So Rona's overall better.
No, it's like you said, the Angelic Intervention, like all of a sudden becomes a card you super want with your, you just wait a couple extra turns on the Mentor and just go off. Let's see. The ALSA on Mentor is 1.4, so people are definitely not passing it. What about on Rona? It's 1.84. Yeah, it's 1.84, so they're, a little bit lower. I would take Monastery Mentor. It does have build-around elements that actually matter. Okay, those are sweet crack-a-packs, man. We got some real bangers there. Let's go over some of the colors, Luis. What I did was, usually when we have Sirkovitz on and we talk about 17 lands, they have to correct for the fact that the average 17's lands user has a higher win percent than 50.
Right.
And so, it's somewhere in the 53, 54% range. So what I did is I said, all right, I'm going to take every card that has a 54 or higher win percentage from each color, put them in order. And then you and I will talk about the cards that we've seen do well or anything that surprised us about these cards, and kind of how things have played out. Because I think it is interesting to see, like, one way I think you can view the 17 lands data, particularly at this point, is this is what this community thinks right now and what they're doing with these cards. It doesn't mean that those are the only things you can do with these cards, or that that's the, market in stone. This is how the format is, but this is what these people are doing with it. And these people are our people. So for white, what are some of the commons? I don't know. Do you want to do any of them off the top of your head that you've liked or that you've thought that have performed well for you?
No, I think it's probably good just to look at the data. Okay. Because a lot of it is pretty contextual in terms of when do you like a specific card or a different card or what have you? Yeah.
So right now, so white has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They have 10 cards that are 54% or higher. So that'll give us an idea for the depth of a given color. Aerial Boost is currently number 1, though it is effectively tied with Angelic Intervention at number 2. So
yeah, both great cards.
2 really good combat tricks. Yeah. Kind of interesting.
Which I think also shows you how much the white decks are lean on aggression, because both these cards get so much better in aggressive decks.
And I can add to that, by the way, number 3 is Swordsworn Cavalier. That's the 3/1.
Yeah, I mean, when the Knights deck plays that on turn 2, you're pretty scared. You're like, I'm going to take 6 damage probably.
Yep.
Before I get something that can block it.
Yep, that's true. What were you going to say before I interrupted you there?
When you look at the white combinations that are good, I think like white blue's head and shoulders above the rest, and then I've liked some of the other ones as well. Like white black is another one I've drafted, but white green and white red I have not liked. So
yeah, I've had one good white green deck, but it was one of those decks that had all the payoffs, like every one, and that kind of power level, of course, does really well. Keeping on the aggression front, the next card is Bola Slinger, which has been really annoying. Like, you do need to kill that card. That's the 2/2 for 3 and a white with backup 1, and it gives the ability to tap down creatures when it attacks. And then our next one is another 4. It is Knight of the New Coalition. So it's just raw power knights, 2 of them at the same time, that type of thing. Interesting to note here that the white land cycler did make the above average, and in this case, top 10 white commons card, the Alabaster Host Intercessor, is right after Cut Short. And then it's Sigiled Sentinel, which is the backup 1 with Vigilance. The Golden Scale Aeronaut, which is a backup 1 with Flying. And the Core Halberd, the cheap equipment that gets +1/+1 in Vigilance, is the last card that barely scraped in at just 54%. Pretty obvious though, right? It's aggression and knights. That's it. Like, there is nothing else here. The only card is Cut Short that doesn't fit that description of either enabling attacking or attacking itself. And I think that that's just because its efficiency is there. The Convoke, makes this good enough to put in your deck.
Yeah, and it can lead to the same turns where you kind of tap out and then still get to kill something right away. But it's crazy how aggressive these cards are. Like, every single card on the list except for Cut Short and maybe Alabaster Host Intercessor are cards heavily targeted towards aggressive decks. Core Halberd, Golden Scale Aeronaut, Bola Slinger. And it also makes sense because backup, because it only lasts till the end of your turn, is a better aggressive mechanic than it is a defensive one.
That's right.
So
white is all about knights and aggression.
Yeah, and I don't think that you don't have to avoid red, white, and white, green like the plague, but I do think that when you first pick a white card, you should be primarily looking to be white, blue, and I've liked white, black, but I don't know what other people's experiences have been with that specifically. Yeah,
mine's been medium, but yeah. Blue. So first off, blue is
the best color by so much.
Color, yes, and that is very much played out here with the commons, which again for us limited players is the real meat of it. There are 14 commons that are above the 54% mark that I set, and in addition, white ranged from 54% at the very bottom up to 56.7. That is not a big range, right? It's only 2.5% from the Core Halberd all the way up to Aerial Boost. Blue, on the other hand, goes from 54.2 for number 14, and number 1 is 62.1%, which, by the way, is the best common in the set. But it does fall off, but number 2 is 60%, number 3 is 58. So, like, how many do I have to go down before I get to the level of white's best card? I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to go 7 cards deep, Luis. 7. The 7th best blue card rates higher than the first best white card at common. Yikes. First place to start is with your 62.1% preening champion. Circovitz did a thread about this, comparing it to
Angelic Overseer.
Right. I mean, this card, Preening Champion, has fit into the format absolutely beautifully. It is, by the way, another pivot card as well. It is a knight itself, and then also it works really well with any Convoke strategy, like in red or whatever. But this card just kind of does it all in the format, and it's the best common by a lot.
The fact that it just does everything you could possibly want, including being good against removal, good with battles, good with Convoke, just a 2-for-1 on its core. A lot of similarities to the Inspiring Overseer, and not surprised by how well it's tended to play out.
Yeah, we loved it in the set review, but things get a little weird because that one we knew would be really good. It has overperformed even relative to that, but still, it's like, okay, I get it. Number 2 is as far as Dispersal. That's the 2 and a blue
to Plowshares.
Yeah, the other blue source of Plowshares, return target creature to its owner's hand, and Surveil 2, which is quite powerful, and it costs 2 less if the creature is attacking.
Yeah, great. It just plays out really well at being extremely efficient while also being really flexible. So when you're on the defensive and you're able to use the Dispersal to stop an attacker, especially if they're try to set up an attack on a battle, great, right? You get a huge advantage out of that. When the game's going longer or you're on aggressive, you can just pay 3 mana and cast the spell. Like, it's not like that does poorly either.
Right.
Like, everything it does is exactly what you want. So
yeah, of course, in a world for incubator tokens too, this card
totally
just better.
Kill your 4/4 incubator token that you jump through some hoops to get into, and get a mana advantage, get to surveil. Like, surveil 2 improves your draws. Sometimes you fire this off because you're like, I need to hit my 4th land. What am I going to do?
Totally. So that's interesting. It fits well in the format, and that might have had you go, "Oh, okay, I get it." Surprised it's that high, but okay. The next 3 cards were really surprising to me, because if you were to ask me, I would have said Temporal Cleansing is going to be next, right? Like, that card has been really great, and I would have also thought that Meeting of Minds would be in the mix here too. And instead, it's Eyes of Gitaxias next, which is 2 and a blue, incubate 3, draw a card. Then Cyba Cryptomancer, which has performed well, better than I thought it would for sure. So I'm still surprised to see it this high, but okay, I knew this one would be on the list somewhere. And then that third of the weird cards is Assimilate Essence, the 1 and a blue, counter target creature battle unless they pay 4. If they do, you incubate 2.
Yeah, it turns out it counters the creature or battle part. I think is the real key here, because a counterspell that only counters creatures, especially one that fades later in the game a bit, right? This they can pay for, though you do get the consolation egg, is something that you have to be concerned with. The fact that it can hit battles means you're not really going to end up in a spot where your opponent can make this dead in your hand.
Right.
It just hits too many of the good cards in your opponent's decks.
What about Eyes of Gitaxias? Have you been impressed by it? Does this live up to your impression of the card?
Yeah, I mean, it's a slow motion Cerul's Pack Wolf, right, where you get to spend 5 mana total, broken up into 2 and 3, to get a 3/3 and draw a card, which is a good ability. It pops off with things like Omen Hawker, the 1 mana 1/1 that taps for 2 mana. I really like that combination. Turn 1 Hawker, turn 3 Eyes is just a huge advantage. It works with like the Corruption of Toashi, any of the Phyrexian enchantments.
Yep.
And it's a good 2-for-1 in a format that doesn't punish you super much for doing those things.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes you just have games where you cast Eyes and you don't flip the eye for a bunch of turns or the incubate token because you don't need to. If you wanted to, you could. And that flexibility is pretty nice. Yeah,
the fact that they made it incubate 3 and not incubate 2, which they easily could have, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a test card around with incubate 2, really ended up being a big difference. I mean, mainly just because there's so many incubate 2 creatures around that just having the thing that's one bigger and blocks them all or whatever is really, really great. And then is Temporal Cleansing, then Meeting of Minds. Then it goes Protocol Knight, Tidal Terror. So another one did make the cut, although it's at 55.1%. We're not talking like taking over the format here. And then rounding it off is Zalfirin Space Shapecraft. Yeah, that one. 1 and a blue instant target creature becomes a 4/3 and you draw a card. Okay. And then Halo Charge Scob is somehow above 54%.
Oh, well, it's not somehow. I can be your budget Circovitz here for a minute. It's because blue's so good that all the blue cards have a higher win rate.
These are all being dragged up by the better cards.
Look, it's not that Halo Charge Scob and Expedition Lookout are as good as the white cards with the similar win rates. It's that Halo Charge Scob and Expedition Lookout get to play next to Breeding Champion, Ifara's Dispersal, and Eyes of Gitaxias. And now we're really talking,
Okay, so they're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Effectively, yeah. And I think that's a good way to look at things.
Yeah, so Halo Charge Skull, you mentioned Expedition Lookout, that's next. Disturbing Conversion, that's the one that gives it -X/-0. And then Moment of Truth was the last one that scraped in at 54.2%. So that's blue. Black is, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's also 10 cards that made the cut there, so not too bad. First one up, what's your instinct?
For black, I think it's going to be the -2/-2, Deadly Derision.
You are very, very close.
Sorry, Final Flourish is what I meant.
You meant Final Flourish.
Deadly Derision will be the second one.
Yeah, they're flipped. Deadly Derision's actually, sure. Yeah, I'm really surprised. I would have bet a lot that Final Flourish was number 1, but it is actually Deadly Derision, and it is by a significant amount. It's 58.6 versus 60.4. Like, there's a gap there. So kind of interesting to see that up there, but 2 removal spells at the top. And then our boy, Number 3, Nezumi Informant.
Love the rat. I just have I feel like my black decks average 2 rats per deck or something.
I know. It's weird because I'll have like a tough decision about cards and then I'm like, I'll just take the rat. It's just like, it's never bad. It always, you always want 2s. You always want things that are creatures to tap for a convoke. Love that card. Another card that I really like is Unseal the Necropolis. That's the 5th card. It's 2 and a black instant. Each player mills 3 cards and then you can bring 2 cards back from your graveyard to your hand, or 2 creatures, I should say.
I love having one of these in my decks. I don't tend to play the second one that often, or at least I don't take it very highly.
Yeah.
And but it's so backbreaking. When you cast this on 6 mana and get back a good creature and then a decent creature, it's already a lot. When you get back 2 good creatures, it's just game over.
It's demoralizing. Yeah, it really is. What was it from Dominaria? The bring back 2. I don't remember what it's called, but
Soul Salvage.
Yeah, and it was a sorcery or whatever. This feels like that. Like the format's slow enough and there's enough big, gold, powerful, splashy rares and stuff that like they finally slog through your rare and it goes to the graveyard and then ends up you're like, unseal, get back my rare, get back another decent creature, and they're just like, duh, because you can only fight so much. Then is Ichor Drinker. So yeah, it's actually doing quite well.
Yeah.
So we had a good read on that.
Look, again, we're not saying that these are the end all be all the stats, but I like it when things like Ichor Drinker line up with my intuition because it means I'm not super far off. And I've liked Ichor Drinker over cards like Vanquish the Weak,
which is next, by the way. Yeah.
And that's not the pick I think looks obvious on the front side.
Agreed. Aetherblade Agent is next. That's the Death Toucher that flips into the 3/3 Death Toucher that draws cards. Card's been solid. I mean, a lot of times you just trade it off as a 2/2, but yeah, when you flip it, it is an issue. That to me is really the sweet spot for the transform cards because many of them haven't really been worth it. But that guy I think is really just a nice transform card. Good design.
The way the transform cards tend to play, in my opinion, is if you want the front side of it and like having the threat of the backside, those are the ones you really want. And something like Nezumi Freewheeler doesn't make the cut for me. Like I think that card is not good. Mm-hmm. Whereas Aetherblade Agent, 2-mana 1/1 Death Touch is just totally fine. Mm-hmm. And then later in the game, maybe you flip it, maybe you don't. It's not like I have rarely seen flipping it be like all that impressive, but it doesn't need it. Whereas something, like the Nezumi Freewheeler, when you cast it, 4-mana 3/3 Menace, not good. When you flip it, it is good, but it just doesn't come up that much.
Right. And it's difficult. And I think the Agent hits a nice sweet spot. Last 3 cards, Traumatic Revelation. Card's been pretty dang good, man. I've been playing one of these like pretty consistently. This is the 1 in a black sorcery. They reveal their hand and you can take a creature or battle card from it. But if you don't, you get to incubate 3. Pretty flexible. There's a lot of really good stuff. Like I've actually been playing this card.
Yeah, I love it because you end up they kind of crack the code on making a discard spell good. You can never miss. You can never truly miss because you always get at least an incubate out of it. And when you do want the effect, it is good to have the effect. It is because you'll know, and it also makes for interesting decisions. Last 2 are Gloomfang Mauler. So once again, the Land Cycler did scrape in, but again, right near the bottom, just over 54%. And then the last one is Corrupted Conviction, which is the black instant. As an additional cost to cast it, you sack a creature and you draw 2 cards, which is right where I would expect it. I would call it playable. Red. Red is shallow. Red is a support color. And before we get into the commons, let's just take a look at the color pairs. Red, blue, great, because blue is awesome, Convoke's awesome. You're basically playing mono blue with Ral's Reinforcements and Volcanic Spites and maybe some like random little creatures. Yep. Stoke the Flames if you got it, sure. Red, black. Okay, red, black sack, again, driven by black cards. Majority black cards, some good red, black, gold cards, maybe a Volcanic Spite, a Marauding Dreadship or what have you. Red, green. Still, I think the red green battle deck doesn't seem particularly real to me. Like it doesn't seem like it comes up a lot. And red white, it just seems horrendous. So it feels like red is just not the color you want to start with because it really impedes your flexibility. And your intuition will be backed up by the fact that there are 4 commons that are above the threshold that I said at 54%, and one of them is sitting right on it. So best red card, easy, right? Volcanic Spite, excellent card.
performs well in the format. It's a 58%er and it's good. Rouse Reinforcements is next one. That's the one that makes 2 1/1s. Then you've got Marauding Dreadship, my favorite artwork in this set, and a card that's actually been okay. And then the last one is Hanger Scrounger, 2 in a red, 2/1 backup 1. And whenever the creature becomes tapped, you can rummage. That's it. So red looks like to be the shallowest, and I assume that means worst color in the format. But man, sniping volcanic spites and some of the gold stuff, no problem. Green. 9 cards deep this time. And the first one up is... This is where I go, huh? Arachnoid Adaptation, the combat trick.
That's the best one?
That's what it says.
I mean, I'll believe it if that's what the numbers say, but
56.7%, which by the way is not very high.
No, I think the green commons mostly suck. I think green can be good, but again, let's do a color pair breakdown. What do you want? Well, do you want to play blue-green? Well, sure. If you're playing like 5 colors, blue-green is good. Do you want to play red-green? Sure. If you're playing 5 colors, red-green is fine. Do you want to play black-green? Yeah, this can come together. Maybe kind of a sacrifice or incubate theme, Elvish, the Vat Keeper and stuff like that. Do you want to play white-green tokens? No, not really.
No. Yeah, it's interesting because I think for me, if you were to ask me, although it is interesting because it is very much. No, I guess I would say that for me, the best green cards that I've played or played against have been Blighted Burgeoning, Overgrown Pest, Cosmic Hunger, and Portent Tracker. Those are the ones that stand out as like, oh, okay, those actually matter. Like when you play one, the Pest is usually a 2 for 1. Cosmic Hunger is like mediocre removal. Burgeoning is a card that actually matters for one archetype quite a bit and then doesn't for the others.
Yeah.
And then the Portent Tracker is like, okay, like it actually gets you up to, a decent amount of mana somewhat quickly. As it actually plays out, it's Arachnoid Adaptation, then Overgrown Pest. Okay, our boy the Pest made it. Then Converter Beast, which I avoid for the most part. That's the 3 in a green 0/1 that gives you an Incubate 5. Okay.
I like that one. Actually,
maybe I should be playing that one more just as a
you should,
2 creatures. Yeah.
I think it's good.
Okay. And then next is Cosmic Hunger. So there's the bite. Okay, fine. Blighted Burgeoning. Okay. Then it's Wary Thespian. All right. I did kind of forget about that one, but I don't play it super often. That's the 1 in a green 3/1 that surveils 1 when it ETBs or dies. And then Seed of Hope, which I find weird that it's on here. It's low. It's 55.2%, but I don't play it and I rarely see people play it. Maybe it's not that it's a terrible Magic card, but it just doesn't seem to have much of a ceiling on it. And then Chomping Kavu, which always beats me, so maybe I should respect that one more. And then the Portent Tracker actually did make the cut just at the end. One card that I did expect to see on here as well that ended up being just below 0.1% below was Serpent Blade Assailant. That's the 2 in a green 2/1 backup one with Death Touch. That card affects the board somewhat, as well. This lineup though is not what I expect. I would have never been able to. I would never have expected that Arachnoid Adaptation was beating out Overgrown Pest, for example. And I'm surprised by it.
There's some a little weird stuff going on there, I guess.
And we'll keep an eye on it going forward. But we can't. You have to take the data at face value, right? Like we know what this data is. We know who it's gathered from, the pool of players, and Arachnoid Adaptation is working for them right now.
Yeah.
So there you go. Just for fun, very early look at the race for Mythic Uncommon. If we use our Mythic Uncommon encompasses more than games in hand win rate, like there's a feeling behind it or whatever. But just to give you an idea of what's winning right now, number 1 is Invasion of Amonkhet. So there you go. And then Marshal of Zalfir is next, which I've never beaten that card a day in my life. So that makes sense. Then Artistic Refusal.
Love it.
Holy crap, right? And then Norn's Inquisitor. That's a 2-drop. And then Captive Weird. I like that one. And then the last one, there's more here, but the last one I want to mention is Halo Forager, that's another one that can be absolutely backbreaking late in the game where you have this moment where you're like, it's close or I'm a little bit ahead. But both players have a bunch of mana, and then they go Halo Forager, and you're like, oh no. And you start digging around through graveyards, and it's like, oh my God, they're going to just like completely blow everything out. And it often does. What do you like out of the list? You an Invasion guy? You a Marshal of Zhalfir guy?
I mean, Invasion of Amonkhet, Marshal of Zhalfir, Artistic Refusal are all cards I take very early.
Okay. Does any of them feel like a Mythic uncommon yet to you?
Invasion does. Invasion just is always so, like, the sick part is it's a 2-for-1 just on its face without anything happening.
Oh yeah, just by resolving it. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't affect the board, but they discard a card, you draw a card is a 2-for-1.
Yep.
Milling a bunch does also go a long way. Milling both players just tends to add some good functionality to the blue-black decks. That some of you it's not like I think the mill 8 cards theme really came through strongly, but you'd play some cards that have that clause, right? You have a C double in your deck, you have Expedition Lookout, you have XYZ, and all of a sudden you're in a spot where your cards are working a little better just because you played this card. Of course, it gives a great selection on the invasion itself, and then it's just huge threat because copying the best creature in the graveyard as a 4/4 often means that in the middle of the game, how often have you had the experience where your opponent's got the invasion in play and you're like, if that thing flips, I'm so screwed.
I'm screwed because they either copy something small that has a good ETB or something huge that has like a bunch of abilities or a major effect, a bomb of some sort. And it's like, It just doesn't feel like you can get away from it. Especially at the 3 mana slot for that one, because flipping that battle is often a game winner. It's one of the best ones that you can flip, and it's uncommon in 3 mana. Like, that's nasty. And it kind of completes the 3-for-1 plus, depending on what you hit. You want to run us through the companions real quick?
Yeah, so I've gotten a chance to now play a lot more with the companions. I mean, we got to play with them in Ikoria, but Ikoria had the whole cycling deck going on, Zenith Flare and all that I think really did cut into the coolness of the companions. And now that we've gotten to play more with these companions, oh man, first of all, I love them. It's like each one adds a new mini set to draft. Like you end up in a spot where you've got a companion. Now you're drafting a stipulation, a whole new thing where you can't take cards that are odd, or you want all your permanents to cost 2 or less. And that is just such a cool thing. It's just such a cool addition to what's going on.
So much better in Limited than they ever did in Constructed.
I know. In Constructed, it's just a joke how unbelievable they are. Like, I don't know. I still don't really know how these things, ended up getting made. In Limited, though, it plays like a dream. So let's start from the top down with like the best ones. So Yorion is amazing, and the reason that I'm really come around on Yorion, I used to not think it was really worth trying to companion it. The reason I have is because you just end up with, 28 good playables, right? Mm-hmm. So let's just first break it down. To play Yorion, you have to play 60 cards. To play 60 cards, you have to play about 33 or 34 actual cards, and then play 26 or 27 land. And you're a little heavier on land than you might think, because you are playing a Yorion companion, so you've got this 5-drop in hand always. So
hitting your land drops up to 5 is automatically good.
Yeah, and you don't really mind ending up with a little bit of extra land in that case. So that means let's say you're playing 27 land. Mm-hmm. So that means you have to get 33 playables. That's only 10 more than you normally would. It's right. You'd play 23-17. So given that, well, how much does it hurt to play 10 more playables, especially if you get Yorion early enough that you're kind of trying to do that, right? Mm-hmm. It just doesn't hurt that bad. You end up playing probably 4 or 5 of those cards are cards you wouldn't mind playing, right? Like that basically don't impact your card quality at all. The only thing it impacts, of course, is when you have a really good card. Like when you have an Elish Norn in your deck, I'm a little less likely to want a companion Yorion. If I had an Elish Norn and a Sunfall, I would never companion Yorion that deck. Uh-huh. Of course, if you have Elish Norn, Yorion, and Sunfall, who cares what you do? You're going to win.
Yeah, and you would put Yorion in your deck. You just wouldn't companion it. Yeah,
right. And then if you end up in a spot where you you're adding 5 good cards or 6 good cards, and then you're adding a couple bad cards, right? You are adding failed conversion or etched host doombringer or anything like that. Like you end up in a spot where, yeah, it's not ideal, but this actually still makes it so that the whole thing does end up working. And when you draw an etched host doombringer, the 3/5 for 5 or a failed conversion or the Inkcaster, right? The 4-mana 2/4 menace. Like, yeah, that card's a little worse, but how much worse are these cards than the average card? They're not that much worse.
No, they're not.
But you know what's busted is drawing a Yorion.
Yeah,
every single game. In your hand, yeah. Because when you flicker battles, when you flicker ETB stuff, which if you start paying attention because you maybe got a Yorion, it's like every card in the set. Like,
it really is. There's all of the backup stuff and all that. It just adds up.
Basically, drawing a Yorion in every single game, effectively in your opening hand, is pretty close to having an extra 2 cards. It's like you got an Ancestral Recall almost. Like because Yorion plus the thing it blinks is just so good.
Yeah, and there's always something. Yeah. So
I would go through pretty big lengths to companion Yorion, and I'm pretty happy with doing so. Overall, good.
I was just going to say, so this makes sense, pack 1, pick 1. What if you're touching blue and or white and you pick up Yorion pack 2, pick 1? Is it too late?
Well, that's the cool thing about Yorion. You don't actually have to draft that differently. Like, if you've drafted a Yorion, yes, you should be taking battles and cards with ETB abilities because that's just good with Yorion.
Right.
But you're not actually contorting your draft. The only thing I'll do is I will take on-color playables later in the pack just in case.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
So I companion Yorion a lot now. Like sometimes you don't have enough playables. I won't play 30 lands and some really rancid cards to make it work, but I will play 27 lands and 3 or 4 slightly undesirables, and I think that's well worth it.
Okay.
Lurrus is my overall favorite. I actually just posted on Twitter a Lurrus deck earlier today, and it was
a busted one.
Yeah, it was so sick. So with Lurrus, there's no restriction on spells, so you can take whatever spells you want. You just have to take all cheap permanents, and it's not it's not impossible to do that. Lurrus is one of the ones that if you don't pick 1, pack 1, or pick 1, or pack 1, pick 3 it or something, you're probably not going to get there on Lurrus. Because you have to draft in a very specific way to make that work. But if you do pick 1 Lurrus, the place I like to go is black-white with Enduring Bondwarden, the 1-mana 0/1 backup, and Dreg Reavers and other sacrifice cards, and just you just get to recycle your Lurrus cards over and over again. The other card I really prioritize, Unseal the Necropolis.
Yeah, you got to have that backup plan, right?
Because it's so sick. Your deck's built around Lurrus. You get Lurrus, you play Lurrus, replay something. And then your opponent kills Lurrus, and then you just get Lurrus back, and it's just like so demoralizing.
It really is. They're just like, no. Because they will always kill Lurrus if given the option. And usually you can play Lurrus and get something back so that you mitigate that, but if you get Lurrus
you should never play Lurrus without playing something right away.
Right. That's a good shortcut for him.
And it just works out really well. And I've had good success first picking Lurrus. I've done it twice so far and been really happy with the results.
And just committed to it. Okay.
And I played against a Lurrus deck that had double Unseal, and they really worked me.
What happens though? Like if you. Like, how do you make the decision between, let's say you do Lurrus all the way through, pack 1 and pack 2, and then pack 3, you open up like the Angel, the Valkyrie or something like that. Like what happened? Like, how do you weigh out?
I would say Lurrus as a companion is comparable to a bomb. So it's better than a Boonbringer Valkyrie. I would say that you could, it's tricky because if you're companioning Lurrus and pick 2, pack 1, you open Valkyrie, you might take, Final Flourish or something over Valkyrie. Right, you might take, or like a good removal spell, Deadly Derision, whatever. If you're so then you didn't take the Valkyrie, then pack 3, you open another Valkyrie, and you're like, well, I didn't take the last one, so that hasn't changed.
Yeah, sunk cost. Okay, there was one more companion specifically that you liked?
I'll touch on a couple more.
Okay.
So Gyruda is another one where you want to play all evens. This is another one where if you don't take it really early, you're probably not going to end up in a position to be able to do it. It is worth it because the curve of turn 2 2-drop, turn 3 companion Gyruda into my hand, turn 4 4-drop, turn 5 4-drop, and then you just play Gyruda a turn later. Like that's just a sick curve.
It is. Yeah.
And I think you end up being really happy with how that works out when you do it. Because a 6-mana 6/6 that puts like another 6 casting cost or 4 casting cost card into play, I mean that's just unbelievable.
Stupid. Yeah, it's really, really dumb. I got the 8-drop, the green, hexproof. I mean, it's just like Crusher, for my opponent, and it's just like, okay, well,
yeah. And so this is one that I think if you open, you're going to companion some of the time. If you can get there. And it is worth it. Again, it's hard to overstate how good it is to companion. Obosh, I don't find to be quite good enough to really go out of my way to companion. It is fine, but it's not busted or anything. Lutri is crazy because you don't really pay any costs to companion Lutri. It's effectively free.
Right.
Like, it's not totally free, but it's pretty free. If you get Lutri early, just don't take doubles. It's not hard to do that.
Yeah. And Lutri's really solid in the colors that it's in too.
Yeah.
Any others?
And the other ones, I don't think you're going to companion them very often. Mm-hmm. Any of the other ones, except for Gigantha. That's another free one, basically. Yep. Not completely free, but if you get Gigantha early enough, it's pretty easy to know how to just end up taking Gigantha and not taking double colored cards, and getting a free 5/5 is also great. The Gigantha is one I don't actually play in the main deck very often, whereas almost all the other ones are actually really good in the actual main deck.
Because Gigantha is just basically stats. I mean, the tap ability is kind of weird.
Just a 5-mana 5/5 is not like a card I'm crazy about,
Yeah.
And overall, I would say that the companions, I mean, they play awesome. They change your draft experience, and they are worth going for in a lot of cases.
That's crazy. Yeah, I like how you put I like envisioning it. Like, look, if I can make this work, it's roughly equivalent to getting another bomb, like to having a bomb. Not that the card itself is, but you get it every game. Yeah, so definitely interesting that these are here, and it makes it. You definitely can look at the decision to include them in the Multiverse Legends, and you're like, okay, yeah. This is cool. I did want to touch on the 4 to 5 color deck that I've been drafting quite a bit of. No, I don't want to go super deep on it here, but just a couple of tips. At common, the duels, Skittering Surveyor and Blighted Burgeoning are the key commons for fixing. And I mentioned it last week, but you basically need to be willing to take duels over everything except for premium stuff, and then make your money later. Like pack 3 is where you're really hoping that some great gold stuff gets opened up, because you can just kind of take it. An uncommon Invasion of Zendikar and Kami of Whispered Hopes also make fixing easy. They're worth it. Invasion flips into a solid 4/4. Like it is worth it to take a turn off to set up your mana perfect and all that. And then the other thing is that I was doing the Showdown stream yesterday, and somebody asked on there, I was green base 3 color at the time, but I was looking at maybe going to 5, and they said, well, would you just go 3 color? And the truth is that, once you have a Blighted Burgeoning and an Invasion of Zendikar and a couple of duels or a Surveyor, it's usually worth it to go to 4 at least. I will sometimes play like no white or no red, but usually it's just like, you just can do all the colors. Like the mana fixing is there if you're willing to prioritize it, and don't be afraid to go all 5. I mean, I've had 2 separate decks now that have had both Niv Mizzet and the Wooburg. What is it? Alara? Yeah, Invasion of Alara. I've had both of those in 2 separate decks and never had a problem casting them. So if you're willing to do it, that is there for you as well. Also, Blighted Burgeoning is pretty good. Like, it is a step up from the normal 3 mana enchant your land, it makes extra mana. Like, you actually get a creature out of it by the end of it, and if you can wait till turn 4, you can have the creature right away. It's pretty decent. One last thing before we go, Luis, we group the battles into tiers, like 3 tiers, top, middle, and bottom. And let's go over that real quick. Invasion of Amonkhet was one that we already covered on the Mythic. It's the best of... I should mention, we did the uncommon battles. We didn't include the rares in this.
Right. Yeah, Invasion of Amonkhet, easily top tier, fantastic card. Invasion of Eldraine, I actually think is in the top tier. Also, the 3 and a black discard too. It turns out this is close enough to a 3-for-1 a lot of the time that you end up being quite happy with how it plays out. I have been really impressed with it.
The only knock I have on it is that the creature you get is quite small, and many of the others give you like 4/4s and 3/4s and like kind of bigger creatures that help you recoup if you were under assault for playing a card like Invasion of Eldraine that doesn't affect the board, but at least it's a creature. Some of them don't even give you that, and you can block with it. And if you are at parity, it starts eating them up pretty quickly. Like 2 damage a turn actually adds up pretty quick. We both like Invasion of Mercadia, that we opened that one in one of our crack packs.
Yeah, Invasion of Mercadia, just paying 2 mana, is just to get some card selection and then later get an advantage is huge.
Mm-hmm. And then Invasion of Xerix, I've really liked it. I feel like I looked at the numbers and it's actually performing a little worse than I thought, but I've been really impressed by it.
Yeah, I like Invasion of Xerix. I think that it ends up playing out the way you kind of want battles to play out, where you're like, bounce your thing, attack my invasion, make a thing, and that is a really good way to do it.
Yeah, it's one of the best pre-combat battles, right? It does all the things you want. Sometimes, you just play one because you're not going to attack it anyway. And then this is one that I was interested that you said you wanted this one on the top list, which is Invasion of Asgul. This is the one where they sacrifice creature or planeswalker and they lose a life when it ETBs, and then it becomes like a 2/1 menace?
2/1 menace that gets a +1/+1 counter on it if a permanent went to the graveyard this turn.
Yeah, on your end step. You like this one a lot.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think you end up being pretty happy with how it plays out. You end up getting a cheap interactive spell to even get pinged for 1, and then often it opens the door for you to get an attack in as well.
Yeah, and I know that like 2 mana battles are definitely, like, if they give you stuff are especially if they affect the board, are pretty darn good. And this is like maybe the only one that actually meets that criteria. Middle ground, Invasion of Dominaria.
Yeah, gaining 4 and drawing a card replaces itself, and then at some point later you have this battle you can attack into.
I like it decently. What about Invasion of Zendikar? Actually, that's the one I just mentioned. Yeah. As another middle ground. Invasion of Lorwyn, I've liked it. It kills almost anything. It's expensive, so it is a late game play. It is a sort of finisher, if you will. But, the fact that it comes down and nabs almost any creature is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I think that this one's a little slow enough that I consider it kind of a bomb. It's a late game bomb. It's not a card that I'm like gonna slam in there, but it is very good.
It does play out more like how you'd think a rare would play out, 6 mana and all that. One that we've both liked is Invasion of Pyrulia. This is the blue-green one that lets you scry 3. It's been pretty darn good, actually. Yeah,
this one has been surprisingly strong. Basically, you're paying 2 mana, replacing itself, getting some card selection, all the things we like, and then you end up in a spot where you get a 4/4 trample ward 2, and you've got other things that also help. It also helps your other things. So I've been impressed by this one. It didn't look like much to me to begin with, but I've thought it is very good.
Yeah. Also, both Invasion of Mercadia and Invasion of Pyrulia, 2 mana and 4 defense. That matters a lot. Olgratha. This is a removal spell of sorts. It's the 4 and a black that drains something for 3. And then it becomes like a Sengir flying vampire thing. I mean, this one makes the list not on raw power level on any particular side of it, but just because it is a removal spell that can become a creature. Like, if you can complete the quest here, that is a pretty dang good 2-for-1.
Yeah. 5 mana, deal 3, gain 3 gets you out of a lot of sticky situations. It can even ping other battles, can't ping itself. That'd be kind of dumb. But and then Grandmother Sengir is a good card to have in play. Mm-hmm. So this in the mid tier, definitely not the top tier, but a card I don't cut and I do take in the first 5 picks of most packs.
We have Invasion of Belenon here in the middle tier, but you said you're a little down on it. Like you definitely didn't want it in the top tier. I wouldn't put it there. Yeah, would you have put it in the bottom?
Yeah, I would have put it in the bottom tier. Mm-hmm. I think that I don't think it's like literally a trap, but I don't think it's very good.
Yeah, you did convince me about the play pattern with it, for sure. We have it at the bottom of the middle tier as as the middle ground. What about Muraganda? Which one is that again? I always forget.
That's the fight one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, fine, right? +1/+1 counter. You get a thing out of it. It flips into a decent creature also. It's the ooze, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again,
fine.
just the ones that are clunky removal into decent creature, it's hard to put those in the bottom tier because when you do actually do the thing, that is a really nice 2-for-1. It just, they ask a lot of you. This one has like 6 defense or whatever. Then on the bottom, we have Moog, which is, that's the +1/+1 counter one. I actually would put that in the middle, but like bottom middle. But you said you really weren't impressed by it because you don't like the green-white deck very much, right?
Yeah, I just don't find the green-white deck to be that impressive.
Yeah. Urgamon, this one I know goes in this category, but I've been playing a disproportionately large amount of them in my 5-color deck because it is actually good in that deck.
Yeah, it is good in the 5-color deck. It's not a card I would play outside of that, but in the 5-color deck, I think it's fine. It's just narrow enough that I'm not going out of my way to pick that card up early.
I give up on Invasion of Kaladesh. I have tried. I really have.
Yeah,
I put it in a bunch of decks, but the
makes
problem,
a 1/1 flyer.
Yeah. I like that part because it gives you something to attack the battle with, but the real downside here is that when you do flip it, the vehicle's just okay. It really isn't anything that special. Like you don't feel like you're really getting ahead. Invasion of New Capenna. I could see where this had a home, but when you actually play the set out, it doesn't play well at all. Like you just don't want to be sacrificing.
I've had it be good in decks, but it's like, would your deck play 2 mana, sack a creature, kill something? Or you get sack creature artifact, I guess. But if your deck would, then yeah, you can put the card in. It fits with the other battles that I like, which is, would you play the card straight up without a backside? Because if you would, then the backside is just pure bonus. Mm-hmm. Most decks don't want that effect, so New Capenna is just not the invasion you want.
Well, and they added to the fact that the backside is meaty. It's the equipment. It's just okay. Like it's not as good as any creatures and stuff. Vryn, this one's a victim, I think. This is the 3 and a blue that sifts, draw 3, discard. There's just too much other good card draw floating around. Yeah. Like this is just way too low on the list. And again, it doesn't give you a creature. Like I really want a creature off of these. I want to be able to attack a battle and have a blocker back. Like that's the idea, right? Because they may play their own battle or they may just attack you for a bunch. And if you get some value, what is it called? Ring of something, overloaded mage ring. It's like, okay, that's fine. You can win a game off of it, but it doesn't block very well.
This doesn't affect the board on either side.
Exactly. There you go.
That's not what you're looking for your 4-mana battle. And look, the world's moved on. Sift is no longer a playable limited magic card, just straight up.
Exactly.
Obviously, there's ways to make card draw good, like Meeting of the Minds is a great card. But Sift, straight up, which is this is uncomfortably close to just casting Sift, and that's not a good plan these days.
Regatha is one that I had a little bit of high hopes for. It's the 2 and a red that does 4 damage to a battle or opponent and 1 damage to a creature. I have seen it perform, but it is too conditional. And again, not really affecting the board in the way you want. It does flip into, this prowess thing and it does a bunch of stuff. Like the power level's there, but man, it just always seems to fall a little bit short. The difference is if you kill something with the ping or not. Like that's the gap, but it's too often that you don't.
Yeah, I think it's a little situational. Really great as your 4th battle.
Yeah, it goes good with other battles, that's for sure. It flips a bunch of them. Yeah. Invasion of Kylum is in the bottom tier as well. This is the white-red one. This one I have never seen do anything good. And then we also have Kamigawa on here, which is the tap something down, and then you get the 2/3 flyer that
Invasion
draws
of
cards.
Xerix at home. Instead of bouncing it, it taps down as not where you want to be.
Yeah. So those are our rough tiers for the invasions. Let us know how you feel about them. Luis, let's call it a show there.
Yeah, if that's not enough info to help you in your drafts, then well, I guess you should go listen to the Lords of Limited because they trounced us so thoroughly in the Showdown.
Indeed, yeah, they can go over in detail their drafts of how they wrecked us.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
yeah, that's what they get.
No, that to the victor go the spoils.
Exactly. That's it.
This is a part of what we're playing for.
We gloat when it's the other way around.
Oh, speaking of which, I need to send Ben dinner money, so I'll let you guys know about that.
Yeah, it feels like every time we win, my PayPal's very quiet, and then when I lose, it's like, hey, there's a request.
Oh, it's because the last 2 I just paid when we lost and took the money when we won, so we went 1-1.
So we were even anyway.
you were even. I just didn't bother.
The Bank of
I
LSV.
I just didn't need you and BK to PayPal me $33 and then have me send you back $33. So
I just didn't get dinner that night because of it. But,
that's
okay.
true. That sucks.
I was playing for it all. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the show. You can find us on social media, Marshall_LR and Luis's LSV. You can find every episode of the podcast over at lrcast.com, as well as links to all of our stuff, YouTube channel, streams, etc. You can catch Luis. He's been streaming March of the Machine. And again, the link's right there on the front if you don't have that already. Yeah, that's going to do it for this one. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Well, it's officially summer. I guess it's technically spring, but officially summer because the weather's nice again. Here.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And as hot grill summer kicks off, I've got the playbook for kind of my standard barbecue. Every year I kind of have like a standard barbecue set list, so I know what I can do, and I kind of refine it. And right now I'm actually going to go do grill right after this show. Step one, we've got just a caprese salad, super easy, right? You got just tomatoes, basil, mozzarella, a little bit of olive oil, balsamic, salt, and pepper. You can make those, very simple. Takes 5 minutes. I've got these shrimp packets. These work out really nicely. You take aluminum foil, like a big square. You put in some uncooked shrimp. You put in some chopped potatoes. You put in like a piece of corn cob, like if you cut one in half or whatever, or into a third. Some like andouille sausage, and then you squeeze some lemon in. You put a pat of butter in. You put Old Bay seasoning. You kind of wrap them up, and you just put them straight on the grill in the packet, and they baste in their own juices as you were. And after 10, 15 minutes, they're done. You just check. Basically, it's like once the potatoes are cooked, everything's done. And so those are a hit because you can also just make one per person, and it's like really convenient to just like kind of dole them out.
How do you eat them? Do you eat them out of the tinfoil, or do you put them in a bowl or something?
Put them on a plate and just unwrap it, and then squeeze some more lemon on it if you're so inclined.
I am.
Yeah, of course. And this year, since my brother loves chicken thighs, it's like one of his favorite grill things. I've been working on that, and I'm doing a kind of like Korean Japanese mix of Japanese barbecue sauce, which is kind of like soy sauce, sesame oil, some mirin, salt, pepper, and combine that with some of the chili crisp oil and some honey, and just marinate them in that for a couple hours. Just toss them on the grill till they're done. Pretty easy. They get a little charred, crisp on the outside. And then throwing the rest of the corn cobs on the grill and basically calling it a day. I mean, that's a quick, easy. I've got a pineapple that I'm going to chop up and throw on the grill afterwards. So that's the playlist.
And that's day one, man.
Well, this is actually the third time I've done this in this month. So I like I said, I'm working on the recipe, but if you've got access to a grill, it's pretty easy to throw some amazing food together in really not that much time. So that's my plan. I don't know what you're up to, but I've got my plan booked.